Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for February 14th, 2018. On today's show, we're going to dive into a bunch of news, including the original script for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a Call of Duty movie gets a director, Netflix acquires even more talent, Get Out goes free, Blue Sky Studios is making an animated musical, Den of Thieves somehow got a sequel, and why the Millenium Falcon looks so different in Solo, a Star Wars story. This is Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And Slash Film Writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, guys, before we get into the news, let's huddle over here by the virtual water cooler and catch up for a little bit. It is Valentine's Day. I'm not sure if you guys know that or not. But I've talked about in the past my diet, my heavily restrictive diet, and I've been finding it hard to actually find a place in LA that is accommodating for Valentine's Day to this diet. I'm on the keto diet, which really means eating a lot of fat, low carb, medium protein, I'm not sure if this is everywhere in the world, but at least in major cities like Los Angeles, on Valentine's Day, it's kind of like a scam, actually. These restaurants create these like prefix menus that like cost a lot of money, and you get 3 or 4 courses, and there is almost no choices. There's a choice between 2 items in the entree section, 2 items in the appetizer section, 2 items in the dessert section, and of course, I can't have any sugar, so I can't have any dessert. I barely can have any of the appetizers. So it's very hard on Valentine's Day to actually find a place where on a diet like I am on that is accommodating of just being able to order I just want to order a steak. Just let me order a steak, and I don't need to have a dessert and don't whatever. But I did find a place. I can report back later on how good it was. I did also want to mention that last night, or actually 2 nights ago, we watched the first episode of Altered Carbon. Have either of you seen this? I'm taking that silence
not yet.
as a no.
No, I haven't watched it yet either.
Yeah. The pilot episode we watched on Netflix. This is Netflix's new series starring
Joel Kinnaman.
Yes, from The Killing and the RoboCop movie that everybody has forgotten about. This show, which is based on a book, is it looks. I am shocked at how good TV looks now. This is set in a Blade Runner-esque sci-fi future, and it still does look not as good as a movie, but it is amazing what they're able to do on a TV budget these days. And the show is based in this future where we have these computers inside us that store all our consciousness, basically, so that after our body dies, we can, if you are rich enough, you can transfer your consciousness to another body. And it's following a murder investigation, a kind of film noir kind of setup. It's interesting. It's not as compelling as I wanted it to be. I'm gonna try to watch a couple more episodes. My girlfriend Kitcher was not as into it as I was, but visually, I think we both agree it is something to at least dip your foot into for that pilot episode, because it's crazy what they're doing on Netflix, and we'll talk about that later in the news. But HT, what have you been up to?
So there's another holiday that's kind of coming around in addition to Valentine's Day, and it's Lunar New Year. So this is coming up on February 16th. It changes the day every year, just kind of goes with the cycle of the lunar calendar. And I celebrate it as a Vietnamese American. In Vietnamese, we call it Tet. So it's similar to Chinese New Year, but it's somewhat related. Basically, every New Year we get to have these special celebrations where often we eat these foods that we can only eat at New Year's for Vietnamese people, it's this sort of sticky rice cake called bánh trứng, which is stuffed with beans and pork and or other such like some savory sort of meats. And we eat like all these special, really sweet rices and other kind of stuff that is really exciting. Especially, there's a really great soup. That's one of my favorite things called bún thang, and it's delicious. And we only ever eat at New Year, so it's a
what
big
is it?
special
What
occasion.
is in bún thang?
So it's rice noodles, and there is sort of dry chicken. I'm trying to describe it. It's chicken and dried pork or some sort of I'm not really sure how they make it. And
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
But why is it only consumed during Lunar New Year?
I don't know. It's just like these foods are always specially sort of set aside for Lunar New Year, and we only ever eat them then. And so that's why it's always a really exciting time. And when I was young, the kids would always get money in these special little red envelopes called lisi, and it's supposed to be or a sort of exchange of good luck and everything like that. But now that I'm working and have a job, I can't get any more, so I'm really sad about that. It used to be like my main form of allowance, and there's always a really interesting little superstitions that my parents practice that I never really expect them to because they always seem like very practical people. So like on New Year's Day, the first person to enter your home is supposed to bring you luck depending on what kind of person they are. So if they're a good person who's had a really great year, then they'll bring luck to your household. But if they're a bad person, then your household will be like consumed by bad luck. And it's really cool. And there's other things. We can't eat duck for the first month after New Year's. We have like these big parties often that we wear these special Vietnamese dresses and outfits called áo dài, more so when we were kids because they like dressing us up in those áo dài as kids. So yeah, I had an early New Year's party with my mom's side of the family this past weekend, and then I'm having another one with my dad's side later this weekend. So it's always a lot of fun. I really enjoy New Year's, and yeah, it's a fun little celebration and kind of get together with my family and all sorts of relatives, and we kind of practice these really interesting traditions and rites that is a nice way of tying into my culture and everything, and lots of great food, of course.
I will admit my ignorance here because I didn't know that the celebration of Lunar New Year was that big of a thing. This is all interesting to me. I hope. This sounds so lazy of me, but I hope someone like Disney is able to make a movie like Coco to not exploit this time of year,
celebrate
but to celebrate and educate us in the culture of what goes around, because it sounds like it is so interesting. It sounds like there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and it's celebrated differently with all Asian cultures too. So that would be a movie I'd love to see.
What is it like when somebody comes into the house who like is the bad person? Are your parents just like, oh shit, it's Karen, damn it, this year is a wash?
Well, my mom always asks my uncle, who lives like 5 minutes away from us, to come and do like this sort of rite every year. And I asked if I ever could do it, like just go out of the house and come back in. And she's like, no, you're not worthy.
so you can be like, okay, we're going to have so-and-so come over and we're going to have a really good year.
Yeah, and I was just like, when can I do it? And she's like, when you have a 10-figure job. And I'm like, that'll never happen then.
It's slowly dawning on me how disrespectful it probably was for me to suggest that a big company like Disney should create a movie around this instead of me actually searching on Wikipedia and learning about it myself. But yeah, I do know, see. This tells you a little bit about me and what I follow. Is I do know Universal Studios in Hollywood and Florida actually celebrates Lunar New Year. So they're having a big celebration with some of the DreamWorks characters, I guess, from like Kung Fu Panda and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if does Lunar New Year even play into those movies? Probably not.
Not really, I don't think. I've only seen the first two Kung Fu Pandas and don't remember them very well. But Lunar New Year is really heavily tied to Chinese culture, so I guess it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And the DreamWorks logo is a moon.
Yes, that's true.
Brad, what have you been up to?
I finally got around to seeing Phantom Thread. The weather here in the Midwest has been unfavorable this winter, to say the least. We've been getting far too much snow. So it's just been every now and then when I would get the time to go to the movies, the weather would be crap, and so I couldn't really go out to effectively see a movie because the theater that I go to is about 20 minutes away. But I finally got around to seeing it this weekend, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is exquisite and elegant. It's this really just fascinating portrait of obsession and passion. Kind of, I don't know, I guess hauntingly lovely, I guess you could say, just because, so the way the characters become intertwined with each other and how they show their affection and love for each other is interesting. But the score, especially Johnny Greenwood's score, was so hypnotizing. I need to get it immediately. It's so good.
I love anything he does. The score is amazing. Brad, without getting into any spoilers, I really dislike the ending of this movie.
Really?
Yeah. You didn't?
No, I think the ending is like. I mean, the ending is what brings it all together. Like the
ending was my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
it was what really made it a twisted sort of gothic romance, which is why I liked it so much.
I think I don't want to get into like spoilers, and because I know a lot of people have not seen this movie yet, but I guess I don't like what Paul Thomas Anderson is probably trying to say about relationships. I don't know the larger message.
I don't think it's nearly as sinister as it seems. I think that it's in this particular I think that it's the idea of suffering through certain things for the sake of love and passion and that kind of thing. It's just, I don't know. I think that it does accomplish exactly what it sets out to do. I don't know. I didn't see it in a.
Yeah, I would never see this romance, this like love story as like the paragon of love stories. In fact, I think it's more of like not a tragedy. Well, I guess kind of like a tragedy. It's sort of like an anti-romance in a way. A lot of the ways that like gothic romances are not, in fact, romances at all, but more just like twisted perversions of relationships. And that's why I think that this movie and the ending kind of nails that down. To avoid getting to spoilers too.
And I think watching the movie, I was thinking the whole time about like, how autobiographical is this movie? I mean, obviously this is set in a different time. It's totally not about Paul Thomas Anderson as a person, but it is about this character that is really obsessed and is an auteur in his industry. And I wonder how much of him is in that character and how much guts it takes, if it is, to put yourself out there on the big screen. Do you know what I mean? Like
it's kind of like what Aronofsky did with Mother, except a little bit less obvious.
Yeah. But we've gone 14 minutes in the water cooler, so we should jump into the news. Let's first start with the original script pages from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. They were posted online. HT, you wrote it up for the site. What do we know?
So co-writer Ed Solomon, who co-wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Chris Matheson, recently posted the original script pages for the movie that he and Chris Matheson wrote when they were sort of aspiring writers struggling to make by in a coffee shop. So these script pages are kind of fairly legible little scribblings that you see on notepad paper. And you see like the first page is actually really interesting, I think, beginning for the first scene for Bill and Ted. I haven't seen it in a while, so I think it's almost shot for shot for it. But it's Bill and Ted playing on their guitars and practicing heavy metal and being silly lunkheads. So I think that's similar to how it starts. I can't quite recall, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But along with the tweets where he posted all the pages of the original script, Ed Solomon sort of launched into this really touching story about how he and Chris Matheson came about creating these characters and how proud he is of these characters who are so pure-hearted and joyous, and being able to enact sort of like this weird positivity on the world in the form of this cult classic film. And he said, if all we did in our career was put the phrase, be excellent to each other out into the world, that wouldn't be such a bad thing. So even though Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is remembered as sort of an irreverent comedy, it is really touching how people really bring this message and the movie's just kind of pure-hearted joy itself to heart. So it's a really sweet little tweet thread that I really recommend reading. And hopefully it's a hint. I'm not really sure if it's a hint. I don't think it's at all related to the long gestating Bill and Ted 3 sequel that has been in talks for a while, but likely maybe won't ever happen.
I was wondering that myself. I was wondering, are they going back through the pages because, they're working on that third film and trying to, get inspiration from the earliest developments of that film. Brad, are you a big fan of Bill and Ted?
I wouldn't say that I'm a big fan of Bill and Ted. I enjoyed it, a decent amount when I was a kid, but I don't have the same reverence for it as I do a movie like, I guess would be the 90s equivalent of it in a way, which is Wayne's World. That was something that I was much more fond of and rewatched over and over again. But I think Bill and Ted is fine for what it is. I don't think it's aged quite as well as some beloved 80s comedies, but it's fine.
See, I haven't watched it in a few years. I used to, I'm a time travel fanatic, and actually they showed Bill and Ted to me. I'd seen it when it was in theaters, but they showed it to me when I think I was in middle school, because I guess there's some educational aspect to the history part.
That was how I watched it. My
Oh, really?
orchestra teacher was obsessed with the movie, and sometimes when we had lulls in class, he would just pop in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and it was one of the movies that was sort of pre-approved by the administration because of the educational aspects. So we watched it a lot when I was in high school.
They won't show that in school anymore.
I love the bonkers ridiculousness of the sequel. The sequel is not as good of a movie, but it's just insane, and it's crazy. I like watching that. But let's move on. I'm not a big video game player. Brad, you play some video games, right?
A little bit here and there. I dabble.
Do you play Call of Duty?
I do. It's actually one of the games I play most consistently because I just like the instant action of the multiplayer.
Well, the Call of Duty movie has just enlisted a new director. You wrote the story up for the site. What do we know?
Yeah, so Activision Blizzard, the video game company, formed their own movie studio a little while back with plans of turning their video games into big film franchises. It didn't go so well with Warcraft, but they're going to try with Call of Duty, which has been an extremely successful video game franchise for a while. First-person shooter that takes place across various war battlefields. And last year we heard that the plans were to create a Call of Duty cinematic universe, a lot of different movies focusing on the different eras that the video games do, and maybe even expand into TV series like Marvel did with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and their Netflix shows. Now they finally got a director attached for what will be the first attempt at a Call of Duty movie, and it's Stefano Sollima, who is the director of Sicario 2 Soldado. We won't see that until June, but apparently whatever work he did on that movie must have been good enough to convince Activision Blizzard that this was the guy to deliver the first Call of Duty movie. Unfortunately, that's really all we know. There's no indication as to which era this Call of Duty movie will focus on. The earlier games in the franchise all took place in World War II before they expanded into the modern warfare titles that were contemporary war set games. And then so it's not clear what exactly will happen. I would imagine they would start in World War II and eventually expand to other arenas, but I don't know. Do you guys feel like I mean, even as people who haven't played the game, like, does the idea of, a war movie franchise, like, sound appealing at all?
I mean, it does sound interesting that they're planning to connect them in some way. But, I haven't played the Call of Duty games, but those games, watching friends play those games, it always seemed to me that it was just about kind of the point and shoot. It didn't really seem to be about characters or story as much as, just the fun action. So I'm not sure what there is to go off of other than, the historical battles and stuff the fictional battles that they're making up. I have not seen any of the work from this director, but we did get an email when we were talking about Sicario 2, from some people saying that his work in, I believe Italy or, another country, is phenomenal.
Yeah, it was his work on, there's this series called Gomorrah. I guess it's a crime series. That's what got him the job on Sicario 2. So he must have some skill behind the camera.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes of this. There's yet to be a really, really good video game movie adaptation. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. I think they're just two very different mediums, and you can't translate one to the other, or in either direction, really well. But let's move on. We were talking about Netflix earlier. Netflix has now signed showrunner Brian Murphy in a huge deal, reportedly worth $300 million. HT, what do we know?
So Ryan Murphy has just signed a 5-year deal that will see the showrunner producing new shows and films exclusively for Netflix. And reportedly, this deal is worth as much as $300 million, according to the New York Times, which would make it the largest ever deal made for a TV producer. And it was the result of a bidding war, reportedly, between Netflix, Fox, and Amazon. Fox, who is the longtime network of Ryan Murphy, he has created shows such as Glee, Scream Queens for the Fox broadcast network, and then also his award-winning series like American Crime Story, Feud, American Horror Story for their cable network FX. So his contract with Fox is expiring at the end of the summer, and as soon as this contract expires, he will make the jump over to Netflix on July 1st. So this is a big move for Netflix, because I don't know where they got all that money, first of all, but it kind of strikes a blow to Disney tangentially, because Disney is currently just entered a deal with 21st Century Fox, and where Disney would acquire most of Fox's properties for the also historic $52.4 billion deal, and that would take sort of Ryan Murphy's shows, which are very, very lucrative and very critically acclaimed, out of the running for Disney. So,
they will still retain the shows that are in production until their end point. Yes, but you think with $300 million, Ryan Murphy's attention might be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's interesting that Netflix is acquiring this talent. It was first Shonda Rhimes, and now Ryan Murphy, like a big hit to FX, I think, because those were two people I think helping FX. Now they only have Noah Hawley.
Yeah, they have Noah Hawley, who does Fargo and Legion, but yeah, FX is sort of bleeding their big showrunners now, and I do think it has something to do with the Disney deal. Ryan Murphy, actually, when the deal was first announced in January, kind of showed trepidation about it and was talking about at the TCAs how he was unsure about his current contract with Fox. So I think that was kind of him looking to jump ship.
At some point in the future, Netflix is going to own all the movies, all the TV shows, all the showrunners, all the directors, all the actors, and we'll just be watching Netflix in our an implant in our eye or something.
And every other movie will be a Cloverfield movie.
Yes. Let's move on to Get Out. Get Out was a big sensation last year, and if you haven't seen it, you will finally get the chance to see it for free in the theater. Brad, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this month, on February 24th, will mark exactly 1 year since Get Out hit theaters. And it's definitely gone the distance with plenty of people, audiences, and both people in the industry as well, because it ended up getting nominated for some Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay. And that doesn't normally happen with movies that get released so early in the year, the qualifying year for the Academy Awards. So Universal and Jordan Peele wanted to show appreciation for the support that the movie got over the past year from fans who saw it over and over again and made it a big blockbuster success, and all the critical acclaim it received by hosting a free screening of the movie at select AMC Theaters locations on President's Day, which is February 19th this month. So if you haven't caught it, you can head out there. It'll be a 7 o'clock local showing. Anybody who shows up can get one free ticket to see the movie. If you want to check it out, in our article we have the link to the website for the Get Out 1 year later celebration, so you can figure out what the closest theater is. It looks like there are over 55 locations, so it's not quite as widely available as when it first hit theaters last year, but that's mostly because it's been out on HBO for a while now and home video and whatnot, so they're probably not looking to see a huge intake of people going back to theaters to see it, but it is free, so it's a cool opportunity to see it on the big screen again. And yeah, I think it's if you haven't, seeing it in the theater would definitely be the best way to see it.
And on President's Day, or what are they trying to say, Brad?
I don't really know. I haven't really noticed anything weird about the headlines or the presidential administration lately. So, who knows? I don't know if there's any political statements to be made.
Okay, moving on. Blue Sky Studios, which is that their films are distributed by Fox, right?
Yes.
Yes. They have hired their first female director and are doing their first animated musical. Makes me wonder if they're, trying to appeal to their new Mickey Mouse masters. But HT, you wrote this up for the site. What do we know?
Right, so Blue Sky Studios is mostly known for Ice Age and the Rio movies, and they have not yet done an animated musical yet, though they've had a lot of extended dance sequences in their films. But they've just hired their first female director, Karen Disher, who will co-direct their first animated musical alongside Steve Martino. And the musical is tentatively titled Foster. It's going to feature songs by La La Land lyricists Benji Pasek and Justin Paul, who recently just had another big hit on their hands with The Greatest Showman. And the film will be written by Tim Federal and produced by Mark Platt. So they're putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that this is an original musical and the first one for Blue Sky Studios, which is not a new animated studio by any means, but it's in its 15th movie for this animated musical will be. So it's sort of in the middling era, and it's a big move to hire a female director too, because even the largest companies like Pixar and Disney have only had about one female director each, and Pixar fired their female director midway through production for Brave, so that didn't look great for them.
It should be mentioned that DreamWorks has had a female director, Jenny something, on the Kung Fu Panda movies.
Yes. Yeah, they've had a female director for the Kung Fu Panda movies, and
Yes, it is an Asian last name.
Jennifer Yeh Nelson.
Yeah.
She's actually she's the only solo female director in the past decade. A lot of the other female directors have been co-directors. And Karen Disher will also be a co-director, but it's sort of a small foot in the door for female directors out there who don't have a lot of great work in the animation industry.
It is a good step forward for sure. I'm wondering, when we first heard the news that Fox was acquiring, or Disney was acquiring Fox, we wondered what is going to become of Blue Sky Studios, because it seems like, that is not the Disney brand whatsoever. But maybe they are going to change their model to be more Disney-esque. I don't know.
which would be a little unfortunate because you would think that Disney would want more diversity amongst its sort of subsidiaries. But I like Blue Sky Studios. I think they do good work, and I would be happy to see them make their first musical.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it turns out. But let's move on to Den of Thieves 2. Something I've never thought I would say out loud, because this is a movie that no one I know saw, and somehow it's getting a sequel. Maybe it's the Gerard Butler fans. I don't know. Brad, what do we know?
So yeah, Den of Thieves was not anything just like a box office hit or anything like that. It made about $41.3 million at the domestic box office and threw on another $15.9 million at the international box office. But that's not bad for a movie that only cost $30 million to make, and whose budget was covered by the pre-sales and a tax incentive. So, I guess STX Films was pretty happy turning a profit with those numbers, and that's enough for them to get a sequel out there. I don't know if anybody really cares at this point. Apparently, most of the cast from the original movie is returning. Gerard Butler, Tucker Tooley, Mark Canton, Alan Siegel, 50 Cent. They're all set to return, and then O'Shea Jackson Jr. is in talks to reprise his role. Apparently, I don't know for sure what this means, but because I haven't seen it, like everybody else didn't. But apparently the returning cast members contradicts events that happen in the first movie. I'm assuming that means some of those characters don't survive or something, but somehow they're being brought back. So who knows what that means or how they're going to do it. Maybe it'll be a prequel of some kind, or just who knows. And I just whatever.
I'm just wondering, why they're making this. I know STX has not had many hits, I guess the Bad Moms movies. So maybe this is, even a lukewarm hit is good enough for them to, invest in a sequel. I do know that, whenever I mention like the actors from Twilight, I get a lot of retweets and a lot of, tweens and teens with, opinions of those actors, good, positive opinions of those actors, and ready to come to their defense at a moment's notice. And I've also noticed this is the same with Gerard Butler, but probably more moms than teens. HT, do you think it is the Gerard Butler mega fans that is pushing this into a sequel?
I mean, it can only be, right? Because I have no clue I don't know personally anyone who saw it. And I know that Gerard Butler certainly has his own little cache of fans. And he does keep getting work. So maybe he's a very in-demand actor with the niche demographic.
Do Gerard Butler fans have like a name? Is there like a fan group?
The Butlerites.
The Butlerites? I remember hearing it back in the day, but I cannot find it. There was some kind of name that they had, and yeah, okay, never mind. Ignore that. Let's move on to our last story, and that is about Han Solo, or Solo, a Star Wars story. We've all been talking about the Millennium Falcon and how shiny it looks. The latest we have heard is, we have the story on why the Millennium Falcon looks different in this new movie. HT, why does it look different?
So the Millennium Falcon we see in Solo, a Star Wars story, is the Falcon before it falls into the hands of our smuggler Han Solo. So at this point, it's owned by Lando Calrissian, who uses it as both a transport vessel and apparently a party vessel, according to a new report from Entertainment Weekly. So he uses it to entertain guests and do other such nice, fun activities. So I think that's why it looks so sleek. And he's not the first owner for it either. It's gone through many modifications since its in creation. So John Kasdan, who's the Solo screenplay writer, talked about how it reflects the needs of every captain. And for Lando, it reflected his need to party. So the way that the difference that we see with this Millennium Falcon is that it's not only much shinier, but it has a different nose. So if you notice, it has a tapered nose instead of the forked mandibles that we are familiar with. And while the EW report doesn't reveal exactly how it changes from the tapered nose to the mandibles, they do say that it would be a spoiler to reveal how it would happen, and that the mandibles were always meant to hold something. And it's clear in the new Hasbro toy that was released of the Millennium Falcon that it can be removed. So it suggests perhaps there's a detachable storage container in between those mandibles that makes that tapered nose. So what that storage container contains, we don't know. And that's all we have for the big changes for the Millennium Falcon. And it's certain to get more banged up throughout the course of Solo, because this is the first meeting that we see between Lando and Han. And perhaps we'll see that game of Sabak that won Han the ownership of the Millennium Falcon in the first place.
Well, I'm sure we'll see that. Brad, any theories on why the front of the Millennium Falcon changes?
I'm willing to bet that he runs into a space street pole or something like that. And he just doesn't have the insurance to cover it. Because Han Solo's not a guy who wants to deal with red tape and the bureaucracy of getting insurance on a ship that he's just going to wreck more anyway.
I mean, he's using it for illegal means anyway, so why would it be insured?
Yeah, exactly. It's worth noting, too, for some reason, a lot of people have referenced a certain drawing that surfaced around the time that Force Awakens was released that showed that the Millennium Falcon's mandibles, the forked ends of it, are supposed to be used for hauling cargo and whatnot, but that was something that was just a concept drawing that was never made canon, but a lot of people think that it appeared in the Force Awakens cross-sections book, but it's not in there, so that's not a canon thing, but I'm sure that they'll come up with some good reason as to why they get rid of that portion of the ship in the movie.
Well, we have hit the end of the news. We've hit the wall. That does it for today's episode of Slash Film Daily. Brad, where can people find you on Twitter?
Find me on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton and check out my podcast, Go Flix Yourself, on the iTunes and other podcasting platforms.
HT, where can people find you?
You can find me every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Hoai-Tran Bui.
You can find me on Twitter at /film. You can find all the stories we talked about today on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published almost every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to Peter at slashfilm.com and leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention the email on the air. And please go rate and review us on iTunes. Spread the word. Tell your friends. We will see you tomorrow.